Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Create Above and Beyond. We have made a ton of progress in this world. We now have Chapter 1 all the way through Chapter 4 fully automated, and it's time to dive in to Divide by Digital and complete our end goal of getting to the moon. So that brings me to what we're actually going to do in today's episode. First thing is complete the quest book. Obviously, we have whatever in Divide by Digital into Spacefarer has, but we also have one final item in Lifesavers to check off, because I want to see green across the board when we're done. I also want to finish the mega base. We have quite a bit of work to do. Mainly some of our buildings still needs to be completed. We need to actually have our automation for getting to the moon. And then also we need to connect this whole bottom section to this top section. Everything above here is connected and everything below here is connected, but we don't have a connection between the two, so that should be pretty straightforward. And our last goal is to reach the moon, and I'm actually going to add one final goal just because I really want to have a nice end of the series. Build a moon base. I don't think that'll be anything too advanced, but I definitely want to have a spot on the moon that we can call home for the end of this series. So without any further ado, let's dive into the quest book. So in the Lifesavers tab, I do have one I never actually completed, which is the powered locking rail. Now, I think if we just craft one of these up, which we have the materials for, I think that completes that. We get a minecart with the chest. That's pretty sweet. And that does complete Lifesavers. So, jumping back to overview, it is time to divide by digital. The entire factory is started back up for one final sprint. With a steady supply of calculation mechanisms, the digital infrastructure performs necessary operations to put together an ideal trajectory. While the data center visibly crunches the numbers, the designated astronaut starts to prepare themselves for space and prepare for launch. So we're going to go ahead and check that, unlocking Chapter 5. Looks like we're going to start down here. And it looks like we're going to have to build some logic and calculate 8 numbers through a series of crafting operations. Digital ME system is recommended for managing the logistics, though not strictly required. And luckily we do have our ME system unlocked and we have one set up. So, processing power. In order to provide mechanical calculations with the number of operations to all available calculation mechanisms, that was quite a sentence. All calculation mechanisms have to be melted down into a figurative processing power they provide. So basically we need to make liquefied logic, which is made by just melting our calculation mechanisms. So that's pretty straightforward. We just need to get another melter set up. And I think that's what we'll do. We could use a magma crucible, but I like the visuals of having a big smeltery system. So yeah, based on the descriptions, I think what we want to do is get all of this set up. And then as this is crafting away, because I think we need a lot of whatever this is, then we start working through all of this to actually craft our rocket and start working our way towards the moon. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and start by getting a setup to start melting down our calculation mechanisms. So kind of looking at where in our base we still have areas for expansion, my first thought was out the back here, but I decided not to because it's really far to the other side of the mountain. I really like all these parts that actually like stick out of the mountain. I think it looks really good. So what I ended up doing is all the way back at the other end of our workshop, right here is this kind of like unused whole area, which I think is going to be absolutely perfect for setting up our little base. We can have it sticking out the wall here. We could eventually have our little rocket ship pad somewhere out in this flat area. I think it'll work out quite nicely. So what I went ahead and did is I got a pretty big smeltery setup, and I have 6 of these drains. So we have our first liquefied logic put together. So all I need to do if I want more is grab some of my calculation mechanisms, stick them in this drawer up here. So now the next step is we actually need to turn this into numbers. So by default, the first starting numbers, you have an 8 and you have a 3, then you have a plus, a times, a divide, and a minus. So I'm going to go ahead and craft all these casts from nickel plates. and we will get our first few numbers. And we can, of course, go ahead and check this guy off. And then we'll collect these 3 numbers and check these off as well. All right, so our casts are installed. We can go ahead and pour out into each of these and then collect our plus, our minus, our multiply, our divide, our 8, and our 3. So that means that these can be checked off. Oh, I guess once I actually grab a bucket of this. So if I can throw a bucket here, I can then pour out into our bucket to get our bucket of liquefied logic. And that should automatically check these off like so. And so now what we have to do is we have to basically calculate out every single other number, which are essentially just gotten from mechanical crafting to do any equation that is possible. So I'm going to do a little bit of figuring out, and I guess we'll probably maybe just go here and just go vertical. And we can start putting together all of our calculations to get every single number 0 through 9. And it looks like these do maybe give some hints, because it says like 3 minus 1, 8 divided by 4, 1 plus 1, a total of 17 options exist to calculate 2's. Any favorites? So these might have some hints in here, but I think for starters, we're just going to go ahead and do my best to figure it out. And yeah, it should be pretty easy to put together. All right, so I figured out all the different calculations we want to use. We do need 8 sets of like final calculations. However, to go into that, some of them use numbers from other calculations. So like to get 2, I need to take 5 minus 3, and we get 5 using 8 minus 3. So to get 2, we actually need to go into like a second set. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a setup where it does like 8 minus 3, and then a second setup that's like 8 minus 3, and then 5 minus 3, then we'd have a third one there. And basically, I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a button where we can hit a button, and it would turn this on, turn this on, turn this on, and all the way through to do like a single craft down the line. And that way, we're going to kind of control so we get one of each number. And the reason we want to do that is to get our final item, we basically need one of each of our liquefied logic. So 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up through 9. Now that being said, this is not enough space, so I think we're just going to expand out over on this way. And we'll kind of build the floor all the way over probably to that wall over there. And I will start putting together all of our crafters and also planning out the logistics for actually getting this all going. All right, so I have decided how we're actually going to do this. So we could do a ton of create logistics and have crazy belts going everywhere, or we could try to get into applied energistics and have it like automatically do it through the interface. But I think I'm going to go with what I think is going to be the easiest way and just cheese it with some ender chests. So what I've done is I prepared a backpack with dies of all of our different numbers. So we can essentially take our die and set up our ender chest. So like for our times here, we're just going to take the chest that's black, which is going to be the first for everything, and then do the second one as gray. So now when we go ahead and make our time symbols, they'll go into the gray chests, which we can then pull into our mechanical crafters. And I can just kind of go through here and grab our plus, our minus, and our divide is just white, so we can leave that actually as is. Will that mess with us in the future? It might, but I think it should be fine for now. And then we also have 8 and 3 already automated, so we can grab our 8 and we can grab our 3 like that. And so now when I go to do our first calculation, all I need to do is have an ender chest going into the mechanical crafter, and then we're pretty much going to be good to go. And as far as how we're actually going to deal with needing multiple of numbers to actually calculate out our end results, like we need more than one crafts making the number 1, what we're just going to do is we're going to have multiples. So like I'll have this one making 1s and this one making 1s, so we can use one of the ones in future calculations and then have the other one go into storage so that we were making one of each of our final numbers at the end. So I'll show you a little bit more what that looks like once we actually get these set up. But I think first things first, we need to figure out how we're going to automate it so only one comes out at a time. And I think we have two ways of doing it. First, we could use smart chutes and have a redstone signal that basically only turns it on to drop one item into our mechanical crafters. But I think what might be a better option is to put a fourth mechanical crafter on each one of these, because when it fills up the 3 slots, it won't go automatically until we hit a button, which can just be a redstone link. And then when that redstone link is activated, then it'll actually craft it up. So I think that's actually what we're going to do. We're going to do 4 mechanical crafters like this, and then all I need to do is grab 3 of our hoppers, put them in the back, and then grab 3 ender chests, and then put the correct dyes in for the correct colors. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do like 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many we actually need to do. So for 1s, the calculation we're going to use is 4 minus 3. So if I look at our backpack, we're going to take 4, and then we need a minus, and then we need a 3. So 4 minus 3 is going to be our code. So we can come in here and pop that in. And so these will automatically fill up with our numbers, which will then go into our mechanical crafters. And looking at all my calculations, we need at least 1 to go into our final output. We also need 8 plus 1 to get 9, and 8 minus 1 to get 7. So we actually need 3 of these setups. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go ahead and do a second set here, and a third set here. And then we also want ender chests at the end, which are each going to have orange dye in them, because that is going to be our 1s. And actually for these, you know what, we're gonna save some ender chests because they're a little bit expensive. And I'll just grab some chutes and some barrels. So I can just put a barrel at the end, and then chutes going all the way down into our ender chest. So that would be our setup for 1s, and then 2s, we're gonna need 3 of those as well, so another set of 3, and then 4s and 5s and 6s. We'll just kind of go through and build all these up. So I will do that off camera, and we'll come back and I'll show you guys when I first started on, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything is going to work as intended. All right, and with that, our whole wall is all set up and ready to go. What I did end up doing is I combined any that had combinations. So like our 3 1 combinations now have just one set of ender chests with hoppers going in, and then chutes below to kind of pull everything all the way down to the bottom. What that does mean is we do have to collect a lot of numbers before each one of these is fully automated, but that shouldn't be too bad. So here is our wall. It ended up being a little bit smaller than I expected, but with this, every time it runs, we should get 1 of each number. So first step is I need to go in, and we're going to turn all of these on to start populating our addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, and then our 8 and our 3. So yep, you can see our 3 start to populate there. And once this guy fills up, then our 3 will populate here and then here. So I'm going to let this run, I guess, until our 5s fill up, which if we look at our numbers here, we're looking for the blue, which is this guy. So once this first one fills up, then we'll start running it and start collecting it. But I guess until then, I'm going to go ahead and put in a ton more calculation mechanisms as this runs, and pretty soon we'll be able to turn it on and let her rip. All right, we have now fully populated our entire set of numbers. So you can see all of our chests have extra items, which means all the way down all of our hoppers and crafters are filled up. So for these first mini applications, we are going to be just dropping a bunch of numbers on the floor, because only a few of these calculations are actually filled up. But I think it is time to go ahead and hit go. And we should have seen 8 minus 3 should given us our 5. Yes, and we can see our first 5 populated in our board. So now this first 5 should get us our first 2, which is going to then go to wherever that 2 decided to go, which is over here. So we can see that we're going to slowly populate out our board and calculate every single number. Now, we are going to have the same problem we had with the other numbers, where I'd fill up all these hoppers with numbers to actually get the system primed and ready to go. So what I am going to do is throw a timer on here and make sure it's facing the right direction. There we go, like that. And just kind of set it to automatically start crafting them up. So I'll put some accumulators down here to pull everything into chests, and then we can kind of sort out these excess numbers later. But yeah, shouldn't be too big of a deal, and pretty quickly here, we should be getting all of our numbers put together and be fully automated. And actually, this is not keeping up at all. Our accumulators just can't go fast enough. So I think what I'm going to do is just take the redstone links off anything that isn't populating yet. So that way, we're not crafting all the scrap. So like I'll take these off. I can leave this one on because it is populated. And I'll this one off. That one can stay because that's populated. That one's populated. That one's good. These two are not yet populated. This one's good and this one isn't. So I'll take those guys off, which should mean we're not going to be spitting out all of this extra numbers. Okay, and we're not. So we'll let those crank up, and then once this next one is actually populated with numbers, then I can go ahead and put the redstone link back on and turn it back on. So in the meantime, while those are crafting up, we're going to go ahead and jump into the rest of the automation for actually building up our rocket and lifting off to the moon. So I think what we're going to do is, this is pretty easy. So I think we're going to start up here with making our matter plastics, which will allow us to craft all the different parts that go into actually crafting up our rocket. So first thing we need to do is craft up these matter balls, which is made in a matter condenser. And basically we use a storage component and any item we want to throw away to craft up these matter balls. So I'm going to go ahead and get a matter condenser, craft it up, check if it needs power. If it does, get a small power station set up over here. I'm sure we're going to need it for something else. And then get our matter plastics being crafted. And then to actually make the plastic ingots, what we need to do is take 9 of them and superheat them. So I also will need to have a small automation for blaze cakes, as I don't think we actually ended up automating those for everything because we haven't needed superheating in any large amounts in this pack. So we're going to go ahead and get that all together so we can start building all our components. Okay, so we got our matter condenser, and I don't think that this does need power, but we do need to put in a ton of items. So you can see stored energy, 897. You can see as I put more in, our bar is going to slowly fill up. So more cobblestone going on in. And I hope this gives us more than one ball, because that is a ton of items. If we truly need 8,000 items per matter ball. So that's about halfway there. Go ahead and fill our inventory up one more time. And it looks like one more time after that, and we should be there. So fill in all this cobblestone. And okay, 892 of 892. I don't know. Oh, destroy items. Okay. Oh, okay, so you have to set this to condense to matter balls, and it's 256 per item. Okay, so that's not bad. Definitely a lot better than 8,000 per item. So, don't think I have to cycle through this every time. Does it take a redstone input to cycle? Maybe it's because we're overloading it, because you can see we're at 1024 of 256. Okay, so now it says 256 per item, and we are at the point where it's empty. So if I grab a bunch of cobblestone, 1, 2, 3, 4 stacks is one item. Okay, so now it is actually just going to work. So every 256 items we pop in here, we're going to get out one matter ball. So that's pretty easy to automate. I think all we're going to do is just grab a few igneous extruders, because it's just free items, and then get those filtered down into our matter condenser, and then on into our basin, which will then work on superheating. Alright, so here is our matter plastic setup. So we've got cobblestone feeding into our condenser, which is making our plastics. Now, we got to make sure we turn that to plastic. So now we need to superheat mix it. So I've got lava pumping into a spout behind here, and I'm just going to feed in cinder flour manually. But should... Oh no, we need to press this first with sugar and eggs. So never mind, I'm going to go craft this cinder flour down first, and then I'll feed it in. Let's actually see if we have a blaze cake. We don't. Okay, so let me go craft up some of the actual blaze cake bases, feed those in here, and then it'll feed down into our blaze burner, which will then cook up our plastic and get us going. Okay, so here is our matter plastic setup. So we've got igneous extruders spitting out cobblestone, going into our matter condenser, which then spits out our matter balls into this basin. Now we're going to feed some of these blaze cake bases in through the back, which is going to craft up our blaze cakes. And then I was kind of waiting to this point to come in here and put a chute, so that way we can have it with a filter for blaze cakes. So now blaze cake should go down through the bottom, and oh, can you not hear the hopper with the blaze burner? Okay, so we might need something else, but I'll figure out how to interface the blaze cakes to the blaze burners, because apparently hoppers don't work. But anyway, we will put in the blaze cakes, then it will start cooking up our matter plastic. And I don't think we need a super ton of these, so I'm not going to worry about automating blaze cakes, or at least the bases. We'll just kind of craft a few up as we go, so that way we can build up all the matter plastic that we need. So I'm going to get this set up to automatically place the blaze cakes in. Then we'll just kind of let it crank away until we have a good amount of matter plastic. Now our numbers are still slowly filling in. I actually think we're at the point now. You know what? All of our 5s are filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these 2 on. And then what else are we crafting? We're also crafting 2s, which I think our 2s are also filled in. So what's next? Actually, I take that back. Our 2s are not yet filled in. So, oh, that's because we're actually crafting 1-to-1. So this whole time, it was crafting only 1-2 and using the 1-2 to make 6s. So we have tons of 6s that we don't really need. So let me get these 2 turned on so we're crafting more 2s, and that will start filling up the next parts of our system. All right, so we've got our numbers all cooking away. We've made some pretty good progress, but we're still waiting on our hoppers to kind of fill up. I regretted that decision. I wish I would have just kind of had the chest go directly into the crafters, but we're here now, so we're going to deal with it. We also have our matter plastics cooking away. These are going a bit slow, but that's fine, honestly. We don't need a ton of these. I think like 2 or 3 stacks, and we'll be good to go. Now, we're going to move on to the next step, which is crude oil. So we do need to harvest some crude oil, and then we need to take it into a fractioning still to get heavy and light oil. And then we need to take each of those oils and put them back into a fractioning still to get our refined fuel. So we get light oil turns into 100 millibuckets, and our heavy oil is going to turn into 75 millibuckets. So both of our fuels are actually used to turn into our refined fuel. And then this stuff, this tar, I don't see any reason to keep that. And then the sulfur we also don't need, so we'll just void both of those. So to actually get oil, we actually do need to adventure out into a world, because this is actually found, like spawned somewhere in your world. Now I have found it before all the way over here. It's a little bit too far to have a pipe. If we had trains, I would do that, but because we don't, I think we're just going to go ahead and use ender tanks. So I have one of these ender tanks set to black, black, black. So I'm going to just place one over here in our base. And now what I'm going to do is flying over to that oil, set up a little extraction building. I have everything here I need to do that. So I'll get that set up, and then we should be ready to go ahead and refine it. All right, so I've got together a little building to harvest our oil. Not necessary, but I would be doing things wrong if I didn't keep up with making little buildings for everything I'm doing. So I've got a hose pulley, which I'm going to dump all the way down into this oil reserve. Then we're just going to pump it over here into this ender tank. So our last step is going to be to come over here and place down some water wheels and get those all hooked up. So we'll start with our first few, and I might expand it based on how quick this actually goes. Now what I am going to do is I think we're going to do a rotational speed controller. And of course this is old Create, so we do have to be conscious about which orientation we're placing our water wheels in. And we also need to have our water flowing in a specific direction. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that should be what we're looking for, although I do need a infinite source. So just do that. And I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's not a ton of power, but we don't really need a ton. We'll leave it at 16 for now. Now we do need to drop this all the way down. So I think what I'm going to do is temporarily just take this out here. Yeah, it's going the wrong way. So that means we just need to pop back over here to our controller. And we're just going to make this negative as fast as it can go, really. Okay, 120 is too fast, or 112 is too fast. We'll just go with that. So now we can see our pulley is dropping all the way down. I did jump in there. It does go pretty deep. Getting out was not very fun, but we'll let this drop down. This is going the right way, so when we do end up stopping it, it should start sucking up all of the oil. And there we go. It's working. So you can see it sucked up this first block, the second block, the third block, and it'll just kind of keep going and fill up our little tank here. Now I do want to go in here, actually FTB chunks, and we are going to claim the chunks around here. Claim chunks. Okay, so there we go. So we're going to claim these 4, which should mean that they are force loaded if we shift right click them, or shift left click them. So we should, in theory, be getting oil even when we're all the way over in our main base. And I think we will probably call that quick enough. I mean, it looks like we're already most of the way down, or at least looks like about half the way down our little spout here. So we'll call that good enough. I'm going to grab my stuff back and we're going to head back to the main base and get our refinement all set up. All right, so I kind of went full thermal series with this setup just because it works. We really don't need to do anything special. So we have our fractioning still, taking our crude oil down, and then we have 2 fractioning stills on either side. And I don't really care which one the light and which one the heavy oil actually goes into. So it'll just kind of pick, not at random, I guess the first time it did, but now that we have oil in both, it'll kind of stick to light oil at the bottom, heavy oil at the top. Now I have some brass funnels at the side, which are just going down into a nullifier. So when we get the materials, we don't actually want any of the items. We're just going to go ahead and void those out right away. Now for the refined fuel, we do need to now grab some pipes so we can filter it out into our tank. So I'll probably grab pipes out this way, and we'll make sure not to pump into our ender tank. And then we'll come up here like that. And then we'll probably pump this all into a create tank just because I like the idea of having a big tank of oil. So let's see what we have for tanks. We only have 2, so I'll have to craft up a bunch of these, but we'll probably do like a maybe 2x2 up to the ceiling here. And I'm sure that will be enough oil. If it ends up not being enough, then I will just make a bigger tank. But I think eventually it's all going down into our rocket anyways, so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But we can go ahead and grab some buckets. And can we take directly out of a fractioning still? I know we can out of our tank here, but we can't do it out of our still. So I might just craft up some more of these tanks, export it into those tanks just so that way we can get these checked off. So we can get our oil now checked off, and we're pretty close to getting to liftoff. Okay, so I have made a huge error in my numbers. So I was just kind of watching this go and it kept breaking. And I was like, once you get it going, it should just chug along until you have a full ender chest of every number. The issue is I didn't account for the multiples. So we need 3 of these calculations that are 5 minus 3 to make 2. I did not account for that when I made my calculations making 5s. So I was like, we need 1 5 to store, and we need 1 5 for this calculation. Great. So that means we need 2 5 calculations. But we have 3 of these, which means we need 3 5s for our calculations and 1 5 to store. So we actually, when this is cranking away and we actually filled all these up and I turned these on, we were using 3 5s, but only making 2 5s per cycle. So what I need to do is I need to slow down some of these calculations. That way we're actually kind of evening out. So I think what the plan is we'll get some more timers and some more redstone links. It won't be very exact, but I'll like slow these down by half. So that way for every 1 cycle where we make 5s, we use 1.5 5, right? It won't be exact, but like we'll definitely be having more 5s being made than are being used. And I'll just kind of go through and do the same thing for all these other calculations until we have timers that actually line up with our numbers. Now, that being said, some of these we are actually done building. So 6s, we got a full ender chest, which is more than we're going to need. And for 0s, we got a full ender chest. So it's not like we made no progress, and a lot of these hoppers are full of numbers ready to keep going. So once I slow this down, I should be able to turn it on, and we should actually start making progress in collecting the last few numbers we need, and then we can take them and combine them into our final combination. So I'll get going on that. I am also almost done collecting our buckets, so I just got our heavy oil. So I can break this and put our fractioning still back, and then we'll place it here and then re-dye that tank. So that way we can collect the light oil. So can I snipe that? I can. So now this should be filling up with light oil. Oh, and it still grabbed heavy oil. Okay. That's easy enough to fix. But yeah, so I'll grab the light oil, put it in a bucket, so that way we can get that checked off too, and then also do the same thing with our refined fuel. All right, buckets are collected, and that's done. So while we wait on our numbers, let's go ahead and start crafting up all of our space gear. But I guess first, let's do this. So we need to craft a planet ID chip, which is a calculation mechanism, and some nether quartz. So we'll go ahead and craft that up. And then I'm also just going to go through here and craft all of these up. Shouldn't be too interesting, so I'll just do that off camera. And then we'll come back when it's time to actually start putting together our rocket station and kind of getting ready for liftoff. We're right at the end game now. This is crazy, and this is very exciting. Most of the stuff we needed to craft up was pretty straightforward, some auto crafting in there. Now, one thing I did have to go out of my way for is oxygen tanks. For oxygen tanks, you actually need to deploy oxygen with a spout onto a bucket, and you get oxygen tanks. And oxygen is got from heated mixing with water, and then you put a copper sheet and a zinc sheet in the basin, and then it basically separates out oxygen and nitrogen, I believe? Hydrogen. So basically our H2O gets separated out, so we can pull our oxygen out and use that. and don't accidentally place it. So we can store that up. And then we also have our hydrogen. Figured we'd store that up as well as we have the system set up. So I built this little setup here, and then we can go ahead and turn it on so you can see it working. So you can see as I give this blaze burner some fuel, this will start mixing up. Then we have these filtered out, and our tanks are going to start filling up with our oxygen and our hydrogen. So with that, everything is ready to build our spaceship, except the rocket guidance computer, which requires the compound matrix, which needs our numbers. Now, I believe we need a stack of each number to get to the moon. Now, I believe that we have already gathered at least a stack of these. So I'm going to run around and we will collect all of our numbers. Now, some of them I didn't bother pulling out into the chest. I didn't want to wait for the whole stack to load up and everything. So we do have our 4, 5s, our 6s, our 7, and we're gonna grab 0. So then we got our 2 and 1s. We'll sneak up in here and grab our 1s. And then last, we need our 3s and our 8s, which we've been producing a bunch of. And with that, now we have a stack of each, and we definitely have more numbers if we need more than a stack, but I believe my calculations are correct. This should be all we need. So first we're going to put in our 0s and then our 1s. Those cook up. Okay, so we got 0s, we got 1s, we got 2s, 3s, and 4s, and 5s, 6s, 7s, and then last but not least, we got our 9s. So you can see these are all baking down and melting. And with that, we have liquefied computation matrix, 200 millibuckets. I don't know why these didn't combine. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it's because we didn't have a full amount, because to make this, you need 10 millibuckets of each. No, I have 7 millibuckets of 2 for whatever reason. I thought I put all stack in there, maybe not. But we should now be able to pour this out. Oh, and we need a lot more for a whole block. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I guess grab another stack, throw it in here, and we'll just kind of fill this all the way up, one stack at a time until we get enough to make our first block. So I went ahead and did the math, and we actually need 3 stacks, a little over 3 stacks of each number to get 1 block, and we need 8 blocks. So I'm actually going to just turn this back on and let it keep going until we have these chests starting to fill up. Most of these we are ready, but we are still waiting on, it looks like 9s we need more of, 1s we definitely need more of, and then 4s we also need more of. But everything else is ready, so we definitely have made progress, but we're not quite there yet. And I guess once I get it turned back on, we will start working on our building here and just kind of get this whole space decorated up. I believe for our launch pad, we're going to open a walkway through here and build it right here on this side of the mountain, because I think when we actually take off, it'd be really cool to be able to see our mega base as we head off to the moon. So without any further ado, we'll jump into a montage that will see me build up our little building while this runs in the background. Alright, so after a lot of waiting, we did finally get to the point where we have a full chest of every single number. Now, this isn't quite enough. I did do the math. We need a little more than that, but like just kind of in our system, we do have extras. So like this chest, we need a few more 2s, but if I come up here, I can find a whole hopper full of 2s. So we do have enough numbers. I went through and made sure. So I'm going to spend some time and fill this guy up until we can just start cranking out our computation matrices. And we only need 8 of them, so that should be pretty quick. We already have our final craft all ready to go. And after that, it's really just going to be going over here, building our rocket, and going to the moon. But of course, that's not going to be all we do. We still have to finish our mega base. And also, I want to show off all of our buddy cards in a cool little display. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and combine all of our numbers. All right, so I crafted up as much computation matrix as possible, and we only had 350 left, so we had just enough to make our 8 computation matrices, which means that is checked off, and we now need to craft our rocket guidance computer. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to fill this guy in. Look at that, and then we hit this button, and we should craft up the final item we need to build our rocket. There it is. So our last thing we need to do is build a flag. And then once we get that, we get some flagpoles that we can actually place down on the moon. But we're going to take a little break from our rocket, and we're going to finish up our base and get our buddy cards in a nice little display. So first step, we got to connect this lower section to the upper section. So I'm going to work on building up some ramps, and then also kind of work on cleaning some stuff up. We do have some interior spaces that are unfinished. Like we can see those water wheels back there we never ended up decorating, and then we have quite a bit of mess over in this area. But other than that, we should be pretty much good to go. And then once we get that, we will find a home for our buddy cards. And then finish it off with putting a roof on this area and kind of building out our little rocket platform in preparation for getting to the moon. Sweet, so now everything is connected together. So we have original path down from our train, and then we had this path up here that goes up to our little like prototype test area. And now we have our new path that goes all the way up. Get a nice little view of our base here. And then all the way up, and this is where we have, I believe, our chapter 2A factory. And then that would go up to our cow farm where we have a ton of burgers. Yeah, we have 900 burgers ready to go, which is pretty sweet. That'll last us more time than we need. Then over here we have our chapter 4 factory, or part of the chapter 4 factory. And then all the way at the end here, up these stairs and up these stairs is where we have our chapter 3 factory. Now, one thing I did run into is at the very top here in our chapter 3 factory, we had a little accident. So this is where we were dropping TNT to make the components, and sadly it looks like one of them detonated at the wrong time or landed on a block or something. I don't really know what happened. Now, that being said, we're so late in the pack that I'm not going to need more of those parts. So I'm not going to end up fixing it. I just kind of put this fence here, but that is just kind of a bummer that did blow up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to get done is get a display set up for our buddy cards. But before we do that, we still have a single All the Biomes You Go card to collect. Now, the only way to get those is from buying mystery packs in the shop here in the market. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here and buy mystery packs until we get it. And then once we get it, I'm going to take all of our different sets and get them all set up on a beautiful little display somewhere up in our base. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get opening packs. And after only 4 stacks of 16 buddy cards, so essentially 1 full stack, we have gathered our final buddy card, Penny D, in the BYG set. So we now have every single buddy card that we can get. And I'm not going to even bother grading them. I'm just happy to have one of everything. And what better place is there than in this little central part of our whole base to display our buddy cards? So all I'm going to do is go through here, place down basically all of the boards I need to do, and then I'm just going to go in here and one by one place down each of the buddy cards in the holders until we're all filled up. Then that's going to be quite a process, so I'll just bring you guys back in once that's done. All right, and with that, we have all of our buddy cards here on display. Have our full Nether set, our full End set, our full Farmer's Delight set, and we got half the Aquaculture set over on this side with the other half over here. Then we have our Create set, our BYG set, and our base set all set up here. And then we have all of our extra cards just sitting here in this little toolbox. Don't know why it won't let me open it, but they are in here. That's actually really concerning that it won't let me open it. I hope I didn't just lock those away forever. Um, that's concerning. But I think we're at the point where we don't really need to worry about that too much anymore. I think, oh man, I wonder if it's because they're inventories. That's really upsetting that that's stuck in there. Um, Man, that was a mistake. Okay. Well, with that all set up, I think it's time that we go ahead and get our base finished up. So we're going to go put a roof on here, and I guess, you know what, that's pretty much it, because the last step is to build our rocket over on this platform. So without any further ado, one final time lapse in our mega base to get that roof put on. And with a roof on our mega base and a little platform for a rocket, we are now completed with our mega base, which means we can go up here. And I did leave a few little ports, so as we're flying around, we can get from place to place. I can go ahead and check off finish the mega base, which is going to be this guy right here. So the last thing I want to do before we actually take off is complete the quest book, and I guess we also got to get ready to take off, which is going to be quite a bit of work. Now, to complete the quest book, obviously we have to get any flag, and then I don't know if it will unlock some new information for us. So let's go ahead and build that flag. And you know what? We're going to do a little entrance from the top to the bottom just because we have flight. That'll be nice to have. So I need to make a flag, which looks like we can just go ahead and do that. And I don't think we just want a white flag, so let's look at what other options we have. Okay, so we can dye the flag just like we do with banners. So take a little bit of time and put together a cool little banner pattern, and we'll get our flag ready for reaching the moon. And we're also gonna keep our flag poles on hand so that way we can actually get it set up once we reach the moon. All right, and after a little bit of messing around, I did come up with this design, which kind of like takes this blue theme and the white of our mega base, but honestly, I like this one a lot better. I figured that would be our little rocket ship jetting across the Earth's surface on our way up to the moon. So I think I am gonna run with this flag, even though it looks a bit silly. So we got a flag and our flag poles. So I'm just gonna dump the rest of this in here. Now, the last, or what I at least assume is gonna be our last quest, is moon turf, is to collect moon turf, which there's no recipe for. I would imagine we need to get from the surface of the moon. So, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our flag here, and we're gonna have to leave this all behind. So I guess first thing is we're gonna craft our rocket, and before we actually leave, we'll take a last tour of this world before we head off into the sky and spend some time getting together what we need to actually go to the moon and survive there, because we do want to attempt at least to make a base on the moon. So I'm gonna grab this barrel full of stuff, which is everything that we need to build our rocket and get to the moon. So we'll just place this right there, put everything back, and then I am going to get started on crafting up our rocket. And I guess I'll take you guys through the process as I go. Now, this is my very first time doing this, so if it's not perfect, please don't be too upset as I kind of work my way through here. So the first thing we need to do is place down our rocket launch pad, and this is essentially going to be like the outline of the space we have available to build in. And looks like we are a few short, so I'll craft up a few more of these. Looks like we need 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll go over to my base. So we'll get those crafted up. Oh, and each one is 5, so I guess that gives us more than enough. So with that, that's going to be the size of our rocket. And then we're going to take this launch tower, and I'm just going to make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, so it looks like we do need to go down at least 1 to like the side of it. And then this is going to determine the height we have available for a rocket. And I don't think we'll go that high, but we'll kind of build it up and then end up with what we got. So the next step here is going to be to add our rocket assembler to one of the blocks. And that allows us to actually build it up. So we're going to grab our rocket assembler. So I'm going to place that, scan. Okay, so yeah, there we go. So that is our available area. And I'm guessing we're going to get a failed scan here because we don't actually have a rocket built yet. So we're going to work on the next steps there. And I guess realistically, it told us what to craft. So we have a rocket fueling station here, which we will be pumping fuel into. But it did give us everything we need. So we need our thrusters and our fuel tanks. And we'll just do something like that. And then, you know what, I'm going to craft 2 more just to kind of make this all even. And yeah, so realistically, we just need to add our seat to the build, our computer, and then a few more tanks. And the other thing we're going to need to do is pump fuel into our fueling station, which I'm actually going to move to this side. We also need to provide both of these with RF power. So I'll get all that set up. We will build up the aesthetics of a rocket and we will fly off to the moon. All right, and I know it isn't the prettiest thing on Earth, but honestly, I think it'll actually do quite nicely, and the mod does kind of warn against using tile entities, so we couldn't really spruce it up with any fences or like really unique texturing other than blocks. So you know what? I think I'm happy with it, and I think that our rocket is ready to go. Now, I am going to get these hooked up to power and fuel, but that's going to be relatively straightforward. But other than that, I am actually going to put a quick pause here because I want to take a tour of our whole world and just kind of look at where we've been and give you guys an idea of like what other crazy projects we've been on in case you've missed other parts of the series. Or if you have watched every episode, just take a look at how far we've made it and above and beyond and all the crazy cool things we've done so far. And of course, this is also going to be the point of the world download, which will be available down in the description. So be on the lookout for that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to pretty much the end of Above and Beyond. And this is where it first started. I don't think this is the exact tree, but right around here is where we actually spawned, believe it or not. I spent quite a bit of time finding the absolute perfect seed that we would have a space to build up our mega base, which we now have fully built up. And we even have a rocket ready to go to the moon. Now, before we take a tour of our mega base, we are going to head on over to where this whole mod pack really got started, which was just over around here at our starter base. And this is where we got all the way through chapter 1 and chapter 2, and it all started right here on this windmill. So this was the very first build in our series that we made, and we spent a lot of time living in here. This was our original workshop all the way at the bottom. And one thing you might notice about this if you've played through the mod pack is there are these little structures that are these like destroyed windmills that can spawn. And this is actually one of those structures. So this base is actually one of those structures that we refitted out. And then we have our first level, which was all of our storage. Actually, maybe this was our storage and this was more crafting. And then all the way up here was our original bedroom. Then at the very top here was our original buddy card room, which was a really fun little way that we used to end every single episode. And yeah, this was a great little starter base. It was a little cramped, but honestly, I kind of liked the feel of it, and why not have a cramped starter base? It just kind of adds like a nice little homely feel to it. And so yeah, that was a great way to start our pack. Now coming over here, we have our crop farm, which is fully automated, and I was a really big fan of this guy. So we have our harvester that goes back and forth on a minecart contraption, and I fitted this out to actually look like a garden, which I really do like the vibe of. And it's definitely something I'd want to do again because it looks great, and the little harvester works out really nicely to kind of keep all of our stuff going and put it all into that building for storage. And then down over here, we have all of our animals. We never really needed to do much with these, but it was nice to have them. The sheep did actually feed us for a little bit because we used to make a lot of mutton into some different food. And hang on, that's a lot of pigs. Did a lightning strike hit? I totally think lightning must have struck our pig pen. And turned them all into piglins. That's so cute. Oh, that's so funny. Man, I wish I could have actually like seen that happen. But yeah, apparently a bunch of our pigs got turned into piglins. Now I think we're gonna go over towards here, which was our original blacksmith. And before we ended up using all of these buddy card tools, we actually started off with Tinkerer's Construct, and this was the area where we put it together. This was one of my more favorite builds where we had our like automatic blasting, washing, and cooking. Then this, I believe at one point was an ore processing plant until we upgraded to like the full-on smeltery version to kind of double our ores. And we also had like a little ore combiner when we needed to make our different alloys. And then right outside across this bridge, this was our first workshop, and this thing was really cool. I'm a huge fan of the build. I think that came out really nice. At the very top is where we did our buddy cards, and kind of down at the bottom here was our first pretty pipe storage, which apparently we still have some stuff in, which I don't really see any reason to take it out. We can leave it. And then all of our different crafting stuff up here. And then a small workshop that we've apparently stripped at some point. Looks like we are missing quite a bit of stuff here, but that's not the end of the world. And our first little board where we were able to like check stuff off. That's so cool. So you can actually like see what I was working on when I moved to the Mega Factory. That's so cool. And then down around here in the basement, this is where we actually did like a lot of testing and where we actually like started on chapter 2 before we actually built our chapter 2 factory. And it's really cool that this is all still kind of set up down here. And now I think we're going to come around to our chapter 1 factory right here. And this is making our kinetic mechanisms fully automatically. So up at the top here, we obviously have like a lot of belts doing a lot of stuff. Pretty much what this is doing is it takes kelp, turns it into agile blocks or agile blocks. I said it wrong for like every episode, and people made a lot of comments on that. But anyway, it smelts it into the agile blocks or agile blocks, however you want to pronounce it, and turns that into, we get bricks as well from clay, and that all combines down into our kinetic mechanisms. Now to make that, we do need andesite, which we get from this really cool little lift. So at the very bottom here, we have a setup where we're mining cobblestone that's being formed over bedrock, which basically turns into all these different rocks. Then it all gets moved to the central platform, which then you already saw our little lift. The lift comes all the way down every once in a while, picks everything up, and then goes all the way up and drops it off. And I was a really big fan of how this ended up working because it's such like a cool little mechanism. When it hits the bottom, these come out, they dispense, and yeah, it ended up working out really, really well. And our chapter 1 factory is, honestly, I hate to say this, probably our most efficient one. Spent a lot of time on getting it to work and getting it to work well, and I'm really proud about how it came out. And along with our chapter 1 factory, we also built a small little chapter 1A factory where we are pulling sap out of all these trees here, which goes into this big tank, which we never actually got filled up. But that's because this is automatically making all of our belts in this little machine here, and it also makes all of our chapter 2 copper mechanisms, which were quite helpful for getting all of our different like fluid equipment all put together. And yeah, I really like this little building. It's definitely quite cute, and I kind of like the general shape of it. Turned out pretty good. And down over this way, past where our chapter 1 factory is, right up there, we have our barrel factory where we were trying to complete the test of patience. Now, sadly, we never actually got it completed. And I think the chances are so low, I'm not actually going to spend the time sitting here waiting for it to complete. I think that's just going to be a mystery that I'll never see the end of. It was cool to try, and it was cool to make this little building, but I think it would just be me sitting here AFK, and at this point, I don't really think that that's worth my time. Now, across this little bridge here is where we have a much more useful factory than this one, which is our mob farm. So this thing was actually really cool and really, really helpful. So at the top here, we have a whole bunch of spawners that we harvested from one of the like super dungeons that are in this game. The roguelike dungeons, that's what they're called. So we harvested all these spawners. It just spawns a ton of mobs, funnels them over here, which we can then hit and then just get tons of XP super fast. And then down here, we were storing all of their drops. And then down one more layer, we were actually taking their armor and automatically funneling it into here, which we were then melting down and turning into diamonds, iron, and gold, which was really cool, which was my main supply and a really good supply of these materials for quite a while. But eventually we had plenty with our mega miner and we didn't need this anymore, but it was definitely cool to have up and running. And then just right up past it over here is our chapter 2 factory, where we're producing a whole bunch of different stuff to get our kinetic mechanisms and turn them into precision mechanisms. And this thing runs really well, and I'm a big fan of it. This was easily one of my more favorite factories that I put together. The building I think looks great, and then inside the actual mechanics of it work really nice. And that was pretty much it for our starter base. Oh, we do have one little sawmill here I didn't talk about, where we were originally processing down some wood. This was a nice little thing to have, but not super important as we kind of moved on in the pack. So this was our starter base, and after we got all the way through chapter 2, I decided it was time to move on out and go to our mega base location over by spawn. And one really cool little thing I did is I actually built a train that worked with this version of Minecraft. Now, it's not great, but it does actually go back and forth, and it's a cool little hover train. And yeah, so it does actually work, and I used it for moving all of my materials and stuff from one base to the new one, and I was really quite happy with it. And flying on over here, so we actually had our tunnel that our train would go through, and it would fly all the way down through here, around this corner, and here it is. Here is our really cool little train that I guess we'll take for one more ride. I believe right here is a button that we can go ahead and hit, and we can see our train is actually going to travel down along the tunnel all the way to our old base. So as we kind of come out to the end of our tunnel, you can see that this thing actually did work pretty well. I mean, it rides smooth. It's basically just a minecart contraption that we then have moved all the way up to the top here. And you can see that we'll slowly kind of just travel along the terrain. And yeah, I was really quite happy with it. It's not perfect by any means, but I mean, it definitely worked. And at one point we did have our storage back here, so it was really quite useful to be able to take our storage from one base to the other. So you can see it even goes around curves kind of nicely and continues on going. Now, the one thing about it is if you do exit the train, you can't get back in. I'm sure you could maybe manage it, but it's definitely tricky, and the hitboxes are definitely weird. But the one main downside of it is when it gets close to the other base, I kind of have to jump off of it and stop the minecarts where they are, because otherwise they kind of just keep going. I never actually managed to get that mechanism to work, but we were late enough in the pack, and I had to do this trek a few enough times that it wasn't really worth the effort. So yeah, I will drive the train over to the other station, we will drive it on back, and then we'll continue out the tour of the mega base. And here's our little train coming back into the station, and there is definitely a weird little charm of these old minecart contraption trains and how they worked. Definitely not going to miss them when we move on to the newer versions of Create, but it was definitely a fun time while they lasted. Alright, so here we are at our station in the main base. Now, all of these drawers are actually left here on purpose because these are from our mega mining project, and I'm not going to bother flying all the way out there, but around here? No, this is our zone where we have our oil reservoir over here. So over here we had a mining machine that would mine an entire chunk all the way down to bedrock. And essentially what it would do is it would deposit into these drawers. So we had these drawers specifically set up so that all of our different items would be stored in them. And it worked out really good. And it got us a lot of resources that took us pretty much through the mid game until we got to the point where we had our trade hall set up. But yeah, so I have all these just in case I ever wanted to go back. I never ended up needing to, which was pretty great, but it was always there in case we did. Now up these stairs here is where we have our workshop. So this create workshop is really cool. It has some downsides, which I'm going to talk about as we kind of look at future workshops, but essentially the way this worked is we could compact, saw, press, crush, double crush, cook, smelt, or wash just by placing items in this top barrel, and then they would come out the bottom barrel after doing the action. Now for a lot of these, it worked really well. Like our crushes worked great, our presses worked great, and our compacts worked great. Even our saws were pretty good. The main issue is we only had like one of each of these actions, and if I were to redo this, I would have like 2 or 3 sets of each, so that way it just really rips through stuff really quick. The other big issue is for our smelting and washing, which all happens down here. We did a belt system where we just slowed our belt way down. Actually, no, we didn't. So what we did is we did a filter that says they're done cooking. So essentially we had to wait for a whole stack to cook before it would move on. And it worked, but it definitely was quite a bit slow. And in the future, I would just drop them on and then have it kind of timed out so that we could do tons of stacks at once instead of just a single. But this workshop was awesome. I liked not having to think about where to go to make stuff. I would just throw the items in the barrel and then grab them when they were done, and it was pretty sweet. Now, in the back here, we have our mega smeltery. So here is our alloy machine. We could put in any combination of materials that would make alloys and would automatically mix them up. And then we could just export them over at the front here, which would then drop it down into this barrel. So you have some brass left over. And then this really cool smeltery, which actually I'm gonna grab some crushed stuff. We'll just grab the rest of what we have. And that's because I really want to show this off because it works really cool. So it crushes it, and then we get our parts here, and then it takes out exactly 3 at a time because that's what it takes to make an ingot. And then it smelts it up, and then once it's smelted, it gets deposited, and then it comes out these funnels, and it looks so cool when it runs. This is probably one of, if not my favorite little side machine that wasn't towards one of the main projects, but yeah, it worked out really nicely, and I really like how it turned out. And then back over here, I believe we were making Invar in the induction smelter. So that was just a little alloy that we had to make using the smelter. Nothing fancy, but it definitely got us where we needed to be until we could just buy them with coins, which is what we ended up doing late game for pretty much most, if not all of our resources. And speaking of, this pit right down here goes all the way down to our coin factory. So we have all of these igneous extruders, which are making cobblestone, which then gets crushed up into red sand, which then gets washed, and we get gold from that. So gold gets spit out, and then we craft that into armor, which we then sell in our trade system for coins. And we have infinite coins, essentially. This is sitting at 32k, which is the max that this thing can hold. And it just sits at 32k, even though we are using quite a bit of it to run all of our dynamos and everything, but yeah, this was a fantastic little system, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now, one step above this, we have our Enderling Trade Hall, where I was able to kind of work through getting our Xylex for our advanced Buddy Steel equipment, and we have a little spot where we opened up all of our Buddy cards until we actually completed all the sets. And then in the back here, we have a Coin Trade Hall, and this thing is really cool, and it was really helpful late game. Essentially, we had anything that could be traded for coins set up in these trade stations where we could hit a lever, and it would automatically trade for that item. And I really wish I would have done it sooner because it gives you everything, and it worked really well. And yeah, I used it for a lot of stuff. And then one layer up here, we have our Enderium factory where we're making our end machines. And this is where we had to melt down our coins into silver bars and combine them with these like little posy bushes we got from the end. Worked pretty good, didn't need to make a ton of them, so it definitely did its job. So after that, we're going to go up a level, where this is stuff that we did in the last episode, where we have our little test hall where we could basically test a bunch of stuff out. And then right through here is where we basically got all of our chaotic alchemy stuff together. We could make infinite coins out of here, but honestly, I kind of just used it to get the achievement done and kind of have some fun putting everything together. And yeah, I really did have a lot of fun with this, and we have our own little periodic table of chaotic alchemy set up here. And I feel like this room is really special, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And continuing up here, We have our Chapter 2A factory, where we were making these infernal mechanisms, which were used for, like, I think our Invar machines, and that worked out pretty good. And then right over here, and this is really cool, we have our giant lava battery. So these are arboreal extractors on these hellbark trees, which export lava. And then we're dumping the lava down into a tank below, which I think I can just break a little hole here temporarily. So we can go check this out. And we have this huge battery. And if this ever got filled up all the way to the top, it would have been enough source blocks to be infinite. So we'd have an infinite source of lava. But honestly, I started pumping out before it filled up, and the trees I have set up kept up just fine. So it was nice to have this reservoir, even if it wasn't necessarily needed to be infinite. We did have a lot of use out of it. Now up these stairs here, we have our little burger farm that we put together last episode. We are making hamburgers. We now have 900 of them, so we can definitely take those to the moon and have as much food as we can need to build our base there. And then down over here, we've got our Chapter 4 factory, which is producing our calculation mechanisms, I believe. Yep, so it's producing our calculation mechanisms right here. And this was a really fun one to put together. We had to mess with mine carts, which ended up looking really cool, all said and done. And then this is the point also where we had to include a bunch of these thermal series machines into our process. And at first I was kind of hesitant, but it ended up being really fun to incorporate them into our builds. And then up these stairs here, we have our Chapter 3 factory. And this is the one that is sadly busted, because part of the process was dropping TNT, and I guess one missed and blew it up. But either way, this one was really cool. I really liked having everything kind of on display in this central area. It was also fun to crushing wheels into our little singularities. Kind of a silly thing, but it was fun to set up. And then the last part of our mega base back here is our power farm. So we are generating, I believe, over 1 million stress units, and we ended up barely making a dent, around a quarter of the power being used for our builds. And yeah, this thing was really cool. It's all being run off of a tree farm, which is right up here. And we can pop out our little maintenance door here. So you can see our tree farm is set up where it just goes back and forth, harvest the trees, and it ended up working out really quite nicely. And then, of course, back this way, we have our final factory where we did all of our maths and got everything ready for our rocket. And then right out here, we have our rocket ready to go to the moon. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and grab, I think, all of my materials. If we just grab our applied energistics system and take that with us, we should have access to everything to kind of build our base on the moon. So I'm going to grab that. I'm just going to run around, grab whatever other miscellaneous resources we've left, and then we are going to finally go to the moon. All right, so I've run around and did some looting, and we pretty much got as much storage as we can get out of it. We just have a few spots left that we could fill, but I think I'm at the point now where I'm going to rip out all of our ME stuff, because we definitely want to take this with us. And I got a little backpack to store. I don't know if we get all of our drives in here, but we should be able to get most of them. Okay. Got some sort of achievement for that. And we should probably... Yeah, we'll need the security terminal. And then I'm going to also go ahead and grab... Oh no, I wrecked this. That's okay. I should be able to fix it like that. Okay. And then I'm also just going to grab all of these new Mystic Dynamos. And I did grab a whole bunch of silver coins so we can keep it running. I'm not going to worry about like fully getting it automatic with chutes and stuff, which actually we need to fix this so we don't just leg out the world by dropping coins forever. But I am just definitely going to get it set up where we can load into it. So we will go ahead and do that. And you know what? We'll take these chutes and these hoppers. It'll be nice to have it set up automatically. So we're going to grab the rest of these hoppers. Okay, so we got all of that together. Now let's go ahead and head over to our rocket. Oh, and I don't want to forget these. These are all of our little toolboxes that hold all of our building supplies, which we'll definitely need. So now I'm going to grab our flag and our poles, and we need the planet ID chip and the guidance computer. And then we also need to throw some oxygen into this gas charge pad. And I believe now we need to suit up with our space gear. And then if we stand on this, it should charge up our oxygen. And I think it did. I think that's telling me that we are full on oxygen. So we'll grab the gas charge pad and whatever gas we had left, which looks like quite a bit. So we should be able to live on the moon for quite a while. And now it's time to come over here and we're going to scan our rocket. Okay, so there it goes. Yeah, okay, so it is moving. It's scanning our rocket to check that we've done everything right. And we'll go ahead and turn our cosmetic armor off. Yeah, we'll do that. Wear a little spacesuit. Okay, and with that, we have scanned our rocket. You do not have enough thrust. Okay, so thrust 900 kilonewtons, weight 1290. So I would imagine we just need to match our thrust and our weight. Luckily, I do have additional thrusters made, so we'll drop one there. And I guess we'll see what we get there. If I need to add more, it's not a big deal to add a few more. All right, and with that scan, we're at 1112, so we're a lot closer. So one more rocket will do it, but I definitely want to keep this thing at least aesthetically balanced. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop 4 on there. And then I'll put some aesthetic blocks on the other 4 areas, and then I think we will be ready to go. All right, and hopefully one final scan that will tell us that we are good to take off with our rocket. And with this scan, we should be good to go. You do not have enough thrust. We have 2020 and 13 newtons of weight. Okay, so I removed some blocks and now it has a different warning that says not enough fuel capacity. So I'm going to add some more fuel tanks and I'll just kind of keep messing around with the amount of fuel tanks and blocks until we get a rocket that compiles and works. And then we will actually set off to the moon. Okay. It's time. Okay, it says clear for liftoff. I ended up crafting a stack of tanks, which I don't think we need. So now we can go ahead and I believe we need to fuel this. So we need to click our fuel station and click our rocket or click our guidance computer. Well, I know one thing we need to do is put in our planet ID chip. So now that we've done that, okay, so we sneak right click on here, then we right click on our rocket. I don't know where specifically because it's not like giving me any feedback. Oh, okay, we have to build first. Okay. So we hit the build button and it is now building. And then I think we can link our fuel into it. And actually, I think what I might want to do is snag our planet ID chip out of it first. Because I think we got to put that in there after it's been built. Okay, and there's the promised leg spike. And crash! Oh no! Okay, so I ended up having to go a lot smaller with the rocket because otherwise the game would just crash. So I did just do a scan and now I can go ahead and hit our build. And I did just test this and it worked, so fingers crossed. We just get the small freeze and we don't crash. And, okay, it worked. Fantastic. Okay, so now we can open up the inventory and we can put our, well, okay, we don't want to take off yet, but we can put our little computer in there and we can take off. Now, I did have a little bit of a rollback. I had to load a save because the crash made the game unplayable. So, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get ready for liftoff. Then we will take off to the moon. It's finally time. All right, so we've got our little mini rocket. We've got everything we need to head to the moon. So first step is we have to throw our spacesuit on and charge up our oxygen. Okay, so we get that, and we'll probably want to take this with us so we can get oxygen on the moon. So we want to keep this, and then we don't need the buckets. So with that, I believe we will scan it one more time. And I believe this is a good, successful rocket. Clear for liftoff, and then we hit build. And we're going to let it build, wait for the leg spike, and we are finally ready to go to the moon. Okay, the leg spike and build complete. So I believe I can shift right click, go into our guidance computer, place in our planet ID chip, and then now we need to link from there to there. And so, yeah, we can see it fueling up. So we will wait for it to finish fueling. And with that, we are now full on fuel. So I think all we got to do is hop in and press space for liftoff. So without any waiting, let's go ahead and launch in 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Oh my God, we're finally doing it. We're finally going to the moon, and you can see our little mega base in the background as we take off. This is so cool. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we're just going to be teleported or if we're just going to instantly be there, but yeah, this is so exciting. Okay, so it looks like we are now leaving Earth's atmosphere and now in space. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing anything other than just sitting here and watching the rocket glitch out. But we're doing it. I see the moon, right? That's the moon down there, isn't it? Oh, okay. 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 And are we landing now? Are we going down? Yeah, look. Okay, so on the left there. Okay, so you can see your altitude. And there it is. There's the moon. There it is. Wow, we finally did it. Look, there's a little base over there. Okay. And a thing over there. There's stuff on the moon. I didn't know there was going to be stuff on the moon. This is so exciting. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, destination the moon. Okay, we've done it. We did it. Wow. Okay, first take a screenshot of that because that's very cool. And I also want to take a screenshot of my coordinates just in case we get lost. Now, we're going to go ahead and grab Moon Turf, which completes our quest book. That's it. That's every single quest completed, which is so cool. Now, I definitely want to go check out those structures I saw. Now, this is cool. We can actually kind of float on the moon. That's fun. Now, our oxygen does not seem to be decreasing fast. I am kind of curious what happens. Okay. We take damage and we get nausea. I just had to try it. I just had to see what would happen if we took our spacesuit off. Okay, so our first little outpost is right down here, which is very cool. And, oh, our flag! We forgot to actually put our flagpole up. Okay, we'll take care of that. But first, I do want to check this out. Got some little crate components. We got a looter chest with a bunch of building stuff. I guess we will take it. Some diamonds on the moon. I don't really know what we need with diamonds at this point, but that's cool. It's a cool loot table. And then random crate components that seem to do nothing. It'd be kind of cool if these actually did something, like produce the oxygen that we use for like our tanks or something. But that's very cool that there's this little moon base. It does look abandoned though. Then let's go check out what looks to be a crash rocket. Yeah, and this is definitely a crash rocket. That's so cool. So we got some glass, we got some rocks, we got more loot checks with a diamond fishing rod. Okay, the rocket components, matter condensers, more loot chests, depth strider, more diamonds, seared fuel tanks. This is pretty cool. I wonder if there's anything in this or if it's just empty. Oh, there is. Look, there's another chest with a bunch more components, books. That's pretty sick. Now, I don't know if there are other structures on the moon, or if like you get like the 2 that spawn by your ship. But I'm gonna head back to my ship, place down my flag, do a little bit more exploring just to see if there's anything else, and if there is, we'll check it out, and if not, we'll go ahead and get started on building our small little moon base. So we got our flagpole. Even though we're not the first on the moon, we're the first to land in this spot apparently. And no, that's not where we wanted that. Want it right there. There it is, our cute little flag placed down on the moon. All right, so just a little ways off from our base, I did find another rocket with some honestly pretty cool loot. I mean, there's some nice loot in these. Like flux saw, back tank, and randomonium, which we may as well harvest one last time. We got a gold coin and a concussive shot. Cool. And this one actually spawned right by one of those little bases, which is neat. This one looks a little different. We've got some components, and we got another gas charge pad in case we left ours, apparently. And then also, right over here, of course there's meteorites on the moon. That makes total sense. What's weird about this is we are getting grass blocks that are spawning. I think that's because this is like a structure that just includes grass, but you know, it's interesting. And I doubt we're going to have a different loot box, but I am curious to see what we'd get in a moon chest, and yeah, skystone and our inscriber stuff. So that seems to be about the same. Oh, there's coal ore. I suppose this is just stone. I wonder if there's caves or like other ores we can find. Like how much could we live on the moon if we really wanted to? Like, could we do like a whole moon playthrough, or is there just kind of like regular stuff that spawns? I guess I'm probably gonna look for like a surface cave instead of just digging straight down, because apparently you're not supposed to do that. And I just ran into another rocket and another abandoned moon base, so I'm guessing that we've seen all the structures the moon has to offer, which they are some cool little structures, and it was exciting to actually find something here, because I was kind of just expecting it to be empty, and I'm really happy that there's actually some stuff around. Oh, and sure enough, actually right by a rocket, there is a cave. I don't know if this is like a big cave that goes really deep, or if it's just like one pocket, but I suppose there is stuff you can do on the moon. I mean, there's coal, there's dirt, there's andesite. Like, you could probably live here for quite a while if you really wanted to. But I think now I'm going to go ahead and place down my gas charge pad, because our oxygen is slowly running out, and I don't want to be out of oxygen anytime soon. So we're going to do that, and then I'm also going to open up this bag, and we're going to get our ME system set up so we can start building our moon base. All right, and with that, we have the bones of our little base all set up. So I've got our unfunctional airlock and our unfunctional dome. That looks really quite cool. I decided, you know, what better shape for a base on the moon than a dome. Now, one thing you might notice is our rocket ship is gone. I don't know why, but I left the game and came back, and our ship is now gone. So we are stranded on the moon, and we are kind of starting to run low on oxygen. We have just a little over a stack left, but we've already used, let's see, 16 buckets and 4, and then we had another 16 at home, so maybe about a third of our oxygen, but we are running out of time. When our oxygen is gone, it is game over. So the last thing we're going to do here is I'm going to take some time going to decorate up my little base, maybe see if we can plant a tree. One thing I did notice is I've tried to plant a tree already, but any sapling you place down, it just turns into a dead bush. Now, I don't know what happens if you place down a leaf. Not that I have a lot to play with, but oh, that doesn't work. It just deletes itself. So even though like this is like a fully enclosed little bubble, we can't really put any nature. So I might remove this grass I placed and just kind of build like a little bit of a base, maybe some ground, maybe like a little bedroom, a study. I don't know. We'll just kind of see what comes to me as I kind of just build out our little base here. And here we are in our final base. I decided to just kind of put down some crate components as if we could start a crate base here if we wanted to, and I'm sure we could, but we definitely would be limited because we can't grow trees here. And the other issue is I only brought a single water bucket with me, so we kind of can't even make oxygen to keep ourselves alive. So we're definitely gonna just call it here and say goodbye to Above and Beyond. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's watched since the beginning or has picked the series up halfway through. All of your views and comments really do mean a lot, and I'm definitely excited to start the next series where we can kind of explore more of the crate mod and start to play around with trains and all the new features that have been added since when Above and Beyond was released. And with that, for the very last time in Crate Above and Beyond, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.